Sits on his bed with his gun in his hand. He thinks his life is over, he can't understand. A bottle of whiskey and some pills in the drawer. He doesn't wanna hurt himself or hurt anymore. Why must it be this way? Just think it all over and listen to the words I say. You are not alone. There are so many people who fight with their demons each day. 'Cause you are not alone. So take my hand, brother, let's beat this together today. You're not alone. She picks up the clothes that fall loose on the floor. She finds a crumpled letter just behind the door. Begins to read it with tears in her eyes. A horrible feeling takes over inside. Says, honey, can I talk to you? There has to be something that we can do. You are not alone. There are so many people who fight with their demons each day. 'Cause you are not alone. So take my hand, baby, let's beat this together today. You're not alone. Ooh, you're not alone. 'Cause you are not alone. There are millions of people who fight with their demons each day. Yeah. And you are not alone. So take my hand, son, let's beat this together today. You're not alone. You're not alone. Not alone. Sits on his bed with his gun in his hand. He puts it away, 'cause now he understands.
Hey everybody, it's Doc and welcome back to another edition of Doc's Boneyard. Wow, that song I chose to start off the episode with was written by a brother from another mother. Yes, an awesome veteran and a man I consider a really dear friend. His name is Shannon Book. He's a retired United States Navy corpsman who served in Iraq, and he now writes and plays music. And yes, that is his song, Not Alone. And you can find his music, Shannon Book Music, on YouTube. It's also on iTunes and Spotify and many other media outlets. But I highly, highly encourage you to check out his music if you liked what you hear. As a matter of fact, I'm going to throw a shameless plug out for my brother. He just released a video May 6th called Dear Mom on YouTube, and it is a heart wrencher. It is a tribute to Gold Star families. And for those of you who do not know what a Gold Star family is, it is a family who has lost one in the service of our country. So yes, it's an emotional video. I've seen it. I played it over and over and over, and I am a Shannon Book fan and subscriber. So thank you, brother, for sharing that. All right, so let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. And for this one, it's one that hits home for me. It has for many years. How many of you are aware that May is Mental Health Awareness Month? That's right. The month of May is dedicated to promoting mental health and breaking the stigma of mental health. Do you have any idea? And I usually start my episodes off with asking a question. Do you have any idea how many Americans have contemplated suicide a year? Just going to let that sink in. Now, I pulled up this information from cdc.gov. I'm sure you could take some of these numbers with a grain of salt, but the sentiment is there. We're going to throw out some figures real quick. 12.3 million have seriously thought about suicide. 3.5 million have made a plan, and 1.7 million have attempted. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have the statistics about how many people complete that action. The statistics that they do have are over 48,000 people have died by suicide in the year 2021. Now, according to those numbers, that's approximately 1 every 11 minutes. If you're familiar with the 22 a day veteran suicide campaign, that's about an approximate number. It may not be totally accurate, but you get the message. 22 is a nice number, and it's you would have to compile the statistics from every law enforcement bureau across the country. But yes, you get an idea that that's a decent, I would say, representation of the severity of the problem. And for those of you who have been following this series for the past 2 years, you know that I am a suicide survivor. Yes, that's right. I reached that point where I felt that I could not and didn't want to go on any longer. And I honestly believed once I reached that point that things would be better without me. Little did I know that was one-sided thinking. I was not taking into account those that I would leave behind and the damage and the pain and the questions that they would have forever and they would never get answers to. So this episode is dedicated to mental health awareness, first of all, suicide awareness, and education. And my sincere hope is that if this message reaches just one person and we could save just one life, that it's all been worth it. And as always, I don't just talk, I throw out resources. I myself have went through the National Crisis Line training for text. And as a matter of fact, that is a thing now. Yes, you can text 988. You can give them as much information as you feel comfortable. They are not going to judge. They are there to listen. They are there to give you a moment of pause, so to speak. And if you're an old fart and old school like me, well, there's always the 1 800 number. As a matter of fact, you can call 1 800 273 TALK. That's 1 800 273 8255. And if you're a veteran, press 1. The only difference is they do have veterans on staff in upstate New York who specifically understand veterans issues. Now, this podcast or this episode is not geared solely toward veterans and first responders. It is geared to anyone out there struggling with mental health issues, depression, suicide, isolation, the whole bit. And I want you to know that it is okay to not be okay. It is perfectly fine to admit that things are past the point that you can handle. There is nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I am overwhelmed. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know where to go. I don't even know if there's help out there. Well, I'm here to assure you that yes, there is help out there. There is always someone out there who's willing and ready to listen. And as a perfect example, I gave you the resources. Uh, I reached that point myself. Like I said, I'm a suicide survivor, and I'm going to hit men right between the legs. You know what? Men have a problem with showing weakness. It's not something that we're told that's acceptable. Hide your tears. Don't show the pain. Don't let them see you hurt. You know what? That's bull. Okay? Especially in our older generation. Yes, it's something that society has taught, and we've bought into it, and let me tell you, it's a crock. Okay? You're not hurting anyone but yourself. It is okay to hurt. It's okay to cry. I myself, and this is all these shows are personal to me. There's always personal components, if not in all of them, in most of them. And I admit, I am 54 years old. I'm a combat veteran. I was in law enforcement, an EMS, and a nurse. And over the years, it takes a toll, but it takes a toll in a way of how you deal with it. And what I mean by that is we get cynical. We see so much that we flip that switch and we pretend it doesn't bother us. And that works for a while until it doesn't work. And it's not that we don't feel emotions. It's not that we don't experience emotions. It's that we've lost the connection to show those emotions, whether it be giving ourselves permission to say, you know what, it's okay to sit and cry. And I struggle with this myself. I honestly do. I feel sad, and my eyes will tear up, and I might even have a few tears, but for some reason, I don't know if it's a mental thing, if it's part of the PTSD chemical imbalance issue. You know what? I'm seeking answers for that. And, I'm not going to say that there are certain shows that I get very emotional about. Matter of fact, right before I sat down to record this podcast, I watched an HBO documentary. It's called Veterans Crisis Line Press 1. And I believe I saw that years ago, probably about a good 10 years ago or so. And I bawled like a baby. And that was one of the few times that my wife actually seen me cry. And just a few minutes ago, I finished watching it, and I was getting all teared up and emotional, and I was like, man, you know what? This is some good stuff. I'm glad I'm allowing myself to feel this and express it. And it's a little, it's a little out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to lie. my little comfort bubble is stretching every day, and not quite to the point where that sucker's gonna pop, and but I'm kind of like if you're a product of the '70s like I am, old Mr. Stretch Armstrong there. You remember you pulled his arms and legs, and he got real big. Yeah, that's kind of it with that. I'm gonna take a pause for the cause here and throw in a couple of promos, and then I'll be right back. Loss. The one thing that changes the world as we know it. Mike Bernhardt has collected poems from those, including his own experiences, who have battled loss and grief. Voices of the Grieving Heart tells not only of loss and grief, but the spirit to rebound and keep going. You can find your copy on Amazon and Kindle. Heroes for Hope is a joint Typhoon Coast Whiskey 901 production. All right, welcome back to the show. A couple of promos I played you. One was for Scotty Frazier, and the other was for Mike Bernhardt. And I also threw another promo in for a show that I do with Mark Clifford. And as a matter of fact, we had Scotty Frazier and Mike Bernhardt on the show, hence the promos. But no, seriously, getting back to what we were talking about, suicide is not just an adult problem. It is also a problem for adolescents, teens, and even preteens, as a matter of fact. So we're going to address the warning signs of teen suicide real quick. And for those of you out there who have children, this is especially important to recognize. So what are the signs of your teen that may be considering taking their own life? Well, changes in eating and sleeping habits. Yeah, that's a big one. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little, binge eating, and that usually corresponds with the eating disorders. It can correspond with eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia, but also seeking food for comfort. That's a big thing. Loss in interest in usual activities. Man, that is huge. If you've got a gamer who all of a sudden just doesn't want to play anymore or gives the gaming system away, man, that's a huge red flag. Obviously, isolation and withdrawal from family members and friends. Man, that is a big one. Isolation is what lets those demons come in. And let me tell you, that is the worst thing that anyone could do is isolate, because you are alone with your mind. And your mind, pardon the pun, has a mind of its own. Acting out behaviors and running away. Man, that's huge. Substance abuse, alcohol and drug abuse. Oh man, that is so prevalent in our society. And it's not even illicit drugs, it's prescribed medications that can be in the home. Painkillers, antidepressants, anyone who's on prescribed drugs for any reason. That's also a danger. Neglecting the personal appearance, man, they just don't give a crap anymore. They don't take a bath, they don't want to change their clothes. Males who don't want to shave, not wearing deodorant, not brushing your teeth. You get the point. Risk taking is another red flag. Speeding, driving recklessly if you're a teen driver, or just taking risks. And social media plays such a huge part in our culture today. And unfortunately, teens see this stuff on social media. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And it provides a false sense of a feeling that it's okay to do this. Obsession with death or dying. Wearing black clothes. Now, granted, teenagers are creatures of their own choosing, and they are susceptible to peer pressure. And, some of them are just trying to figure out who they are. And, it's not unheard of for, teens to just be into the all black thing. I have a stepdaughter who was like that when she was that age. Loss of interest in schoolwork. If you have an exceptional student who, for some reason, all of a sudden is starting to go down in performance and getting bad grades, something's up. Problems focusing. And that could be ADD or ADHD related, or it could be just the simple fact that they are trying to find their way in this world. They're trying to figure out who they are. You add peer pressure on top of that, and man, the pile just keeps bigger, or keeps getting bigger. Feeling like they want to die. A lack of response to praise is a real big one. Now, granted, there are some kids that don't make a big deal about the things they do, but there are others that, who when you give them a compliment, they say, oh, well, I'm not that, or, just things that may elude you or may point you in that direction. And of course, there's the obvious flashing neon red signs that I want to kill myself, or I'm going to commit suicide, or I won't have this problem much longer, or maybe, if anything happens to me, I just want you to know I love you, whatever. One of the telltale signs that a person has contemplated suicide, come up with a plan, and may be ready to act on that plan is suddenly becoming cheerful after a period of depression. That means that they have come to peace with their decision and they are possibly ready to carry out the act of committing suicide. And obviously, writing, suicidal notes or postings on social media. Those are huge. What teens are at risk for suicide is an important question. Teens with impulsive behaviors. Teens that have one or more mental health conditions. It's not unheard of for teens to have substance abuse disorders. It's prevalent in our society, as a matter of fact. A recent tragedy like a death of a loved one or friend, a family history of mental health or substance, or a family history of mental issues or substance use. Also, a family history of suicide. If one in the teen's close circle of family has committed suicide, that teen is more likely to consider that as an option to solve the problem. This is huge, folks. Family violence, including physical, sexual, or verbal and emotional abuse. Man, that is taboo in our society. It goes on all the time behind closed doors. A lot of people may see the signs, but don't quite know what to say, or their fear of getting involved. Weapons in the home. Who in this day and age does not have a firearm or a knife? Obviously, a past suicide attempt. If one has attempted suicide before, the likelihood of them attempting it again drastically increases. So those are kind of the red flags and warnings for teens. And teens are already at that critical age where they've got the hormonal things happening. They're searching for a way to be included. They're trying to figure out who they are. And man, when you compile all that stuff up and stack it up on top of each other, man, I remember how hard it was when I was a teen back in the 80s. I cannot imagine what they're going through now, especially with social media playing such a huge part in our daily day to day activities in life. And I went through suicide awareness training, and in that training, we learned that the signs are there no matter how simple or how subtle they may be. The key is knowing what to look for. And we're going to talk about that right now, as a matter of fact. Some of the symptoms include, hey, I wish I was dead. I wish I was never born. Things to that effect, or, the obvious, I'm going to kill myself. Getting the means to take your own life, buying a gun or stockpiling medications. And I'm not saying that if you have a gun, someone's going to commit suicide with it. No, but if the avenue is available, it makes it a lot easier for them to get a hold of it and possibly use it. Withdrawing from social contact, like I said before, isolation, the mood swings, the preoccupation with death or dying. This one is huge, feeling trapped or hopeless about a situation. And we are good at putting on an act. We should all be Academy Award winners, because once we leave the house, that face goes on that, we're not having any problems and we can handle it, and we can. We can handle it until we can't handle it. And once those cracks start to form in that wall that we put up around, that's when people start seeing or notice the potential warning signs. A huge thing is a change in your normal routine. Sleeping more, sleeping less, taking risks just as teenagers do, giving away items that you once considered meaningful, saying goodbye as though you'll never see that person again. I mean, these are all huge, huge red flags. So let me ask you this. If you know someone who meets these criteria, or you suspect that something just isn't right, what can you do? Well, there's several things you can do. You can open a conversation. That's the first thing. Get them in a place, or get them to a place where they feel safe talking. Or if it's best to be in a one-on-one setting away from others. Speak from your heart, let them know that you care, that you know that something isn't right. This is what you've seen, or, and just listen. Listen to what they have to say. And a lot of times that is just the opening that they need. They want to tell their story. They want someone to know what's wrong, and a lot of times they just don't know how to go about it. Listening is more powerful than you will ever know. And validated show openness, be sympathetic and judgmental. Be calm, patient, and accepting of what they're telling you. And keep them talking. The more they talk, the more they talk, the more they have an opening to get what's inside of them out. And the worst thing you could do is try to solve their problem for them. They're going to tell you things that are going to be distressing for you to hear. and you got to take care of yourself. And if the person is in imminent risk or you feel that they are in imminent risk, don't hesitate to call 911. If during the conversation you can help them come up with a plan, what's called a safe plan, and give them hope for tomorrow, you know, hope is huge. And people who are contemplating suicide, they have lost hope. And this is something that most people do not understand. They think that suicide is the coward's way out. Well, let me tell you, I want to set the record straight, but this is from my personal experience. It takes a hell of a lot of strength to know that you were making the decision to end your life. It even takes more strength to commit to doing that act. For those who have never been there, I hold no judgment and I don't expect you to understand, but there's a psychology to being suicidal, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. And, it starts with some sort of event, something that triggers sadness. And sadness leads to depression. Now, there's a lot of different professionals out there that'll say, well, if the person is depressed, or if the person experiences extreme sadness for this amount of time, then it depends on the individual. Okay, I don't do not quote me on this, but I do not believe that there is a specific time frame involved. But it is a worsening of sadness to a point of hopelessness. And in my case, it took years. It wasn't that I woke up sad one day and decided to kill myself the next day. No. It was a slow downward slide, and most people experience that. And I'm going to mention some of the circumstances that increase suicide risk. Like I said before, the previous suicide attempt, that's an automatic red flag. The history of depression or other mental illnesses, that's huge. Serious illness such as chronic pain, oh man, pain is the body's reaction to something not right. Okay, that's your brain's way of saying, hey, look, there's a problem. Not quite sure what it is, but something you might want to take notice of and try to get it resolved. Well, when there's chronic pain, because the problem can't be resolved, that gets old. And I, for one, suffer with chronic pain. I was hurt in Iraq, and I have chronic knee, hip, and lower back pain that I deal with on a daily basis, and you just want it to stop. Now, that's the physical pain. The mental pain is just the same. You want it to stop. Criminal and legal problems, oh man, that's huge. Divorce, financial problems, substance abuse, man, alcohol and drugs. And the weird thing about alcohol and drugs is they lower your inhibition. That's the caveat with using substances, that you will do things under the influence of substances that you probably wouldn't normally do if you weren't under the influence, because that little voice inside your head will say, you know what, you really don't want to run around outside naked, or whatever reckless behavior. Violence and victimization, oh man, those are huge. Victims of domestic abuse. Oh man, and that's another taboo subject in our society that I'm going to get into in another show at another time. Relationships, man, bullying, especially with teens and adolescents and pre-adolescents. And like I said before, a family history of suicide, loss of a loved one from suicide, breakups are huge. Loss of relationships, divorce, and like I talked about, domestic abuse, violence in the home, isolation again. Can't get away from that. Now, what are some of the challenges to getting help? And this is, oh man, this is probably one of the biggest things out there is the lack of access to health care, man. It costs money to get help. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. And if you are of a low income, man, it's monumental. There is no way around it. The stigma of mental health is another thing that causes people not to get help because they don't want to be seen as quote unquote crazy. I don't know where in the hell that came from, but for some reason, that is a societal pressure. The ease of lethal means of suicide among people at risk. Guns in the unsecured firearms in the home, bladed objects, swords, knives, medications, man. Definitely. Oxycontin, pain relievers, even stuff, that other family members are on. And like I talked earlier about social media. Oh, man. Social media, unfortunately, gives the impression that it's okay to act however you feel you want to act. And most people exercise some common sense in not doing what they see on social media. But then there's others out there that say, well, if they can do it, well, why can't I do it? And just because you can do something doesn't mean that there's not going to be repercussions or consequences for that action. I, for one, am a living testament to that fact. So I know that this podcast has touched on a very, very serious and deep subject that resonates with everyone who's walking, talking, living, and breathing. And it is my sincere hope that we somehow start to tear down the walls of the mental health stigma. More importantly, get involved. Just get involved. Let people know that it's okay to not be okay. That they're not going to be judged for having problems because let me tell you, life happens. It's unavoidable. But it's what you do with what happens that determines the outcome. And I, for one, I was a prisoner to PTSD for years until what I call my coming alive day, which was December 28th, 2018, when I said enough was enough. And I can tell you, from 2009 to 2018, I was living in my own hell with a buttload of hospitalizations for depression and suicidal thoughts and the attempts. And remember, hope is out there. It's always out there. Help is just a call away. Again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to me ramble incessantly. Yes, I got to throw that cheese into every sandwich. I appreciate you tuning in. Your love and support means the world to me. Just a quick demographic note. As of last week, Doc's Boneyard has reached a global audience of 338 countries or correction, 338 cities in 38 countries around the world. So thank you for getting the message out. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, I love you. And until next time, remember, it's not the fat, the gristle, the meat. It's just the bare bones. Until next time, folks. God bless.
He sits on his bed with his gun in his hand. He thinks his life is over, he can't understand. A bottle of whiskey and some pills in the drawer. He doesn't wanna hurt himself or hurt anymore. Why must it be this way? Just think it all over and listen to the words I say. You are not alone. There are so many people who fight with their demons each day. 'Cause you are not alone. So take my hand, brother, let's beat this together today. You're not alone. She picks up the clothes that fall loose on the floor. She finds a crumpled letter just behind the door. Begins to read it with tears in her eyes. A horrible feeling takes over inside. Says, honey, can I talk to you? There has to be something that we can do. You are not alone. There are so many people who fight with their demons each day. 'Cause you are not alone. So take my hand, baby, let's beat this together today. You're not alone. Ooh, you're not alone. 'Cause you are not alone. There are millions of people who fight with their demons each day. Yeah, yeah. And you are not alone. So take my hand, son, let's beat this together today. You are not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. Sits on his bed with his gun in his hand. He puts it away, 'cause now he understands.